The last chapter of the term is Chapter 15 on the special senses. There are 5 special senses. Olfaction is smell, gustation is taste, vision, equilibrium is balance, and hearing. All originate with 1 or 2 types of sensory receptor cells. Dendrites of specialized neurons, such as olfactory receptors, or specialized cells that synapse with sensory neurons. And the depolarization of a sensory neuron is called a generator potential. Olfactory receptors are dendrites of specialized neurons. Dissolved odorants or molecules that create the odor will bind to the olfactory receptor, triggering a depolarization. With a strong enough stimulus, the generator potential triggers action potentials that go to the central nervous system. Receptors for taste, vision, equilibrium, and hearing are specialized cells with inexcitable membranes. They synapse with sensory neurons. With enough stimulation, it will trigger a graded depolarization. And so, just like you've learned in the nervous chapter as well as in the muscle chapter, a graded depolarization of the receptor cell triggers the neurotransmitter release. The neurotransmitter depolarizes the sensory neurons, causing a generator potential that can trigger an action potential. So let's get into detail on olfaction. Think of olfactory for smell. And these are organs in our nasal cavity about the size of a quarter on each side of the nasal septum. This is where the receptor cells are. And olfactory organs have 2 layers, the olfactory epithelium and the underlying lamina propria. The olfactory receptor cells are modified neurons. There's 10 to 20 per 5 centimeter squared area. There's support cells, and there's basal cells or stem cells that will constantly be reproduced. This is one of the few examples of neuronal mitosis. The lamina propria is the underlying areolar tissue that carries the blood vessels and nerves. And olfactory glands secretions absorb water, forming a thick, pigmented mucus. And so this is showing the olfactory epithelium and the lamina propria. The odorant is the dissolved chemical that stimulates the olfactory neurons. It binds to receptors on the dendrites of the olfactory receptor cells. And usually these are just small organic molecules. So the molecule that you smell is a molecule that has entered your body to bind to receptors on your olfactory patch. As few as 4 molecules can activate the receptor cell. You do not need to know the process of olfaction, converting ATP to cyclic AMP. So the olfactory pathway, you'll see what happens once that specialized receptor cell is stimulated. So from the olfactory receptor cell, we have bundled axons that penetrate this cribiform plate of the ethmoid bone and go to the olfactory bulb on the underside of the frontal lobe of the brain, and then travel posteriorly along the olfactory tract. And this information is carried to the limbic system, the hypothalamus, and the olfactory cortex for processing. The limbic system is involved in emotion. The hypothalamus, part of the autonomic nervous system, explains why smells can produce emotional and behavioral responses. Taste is gustation. It involves epithelial chemoreceptors in taste buds. So the most important receptors are on the superior surface of the tongue but there are receptors in other areas of the oral cavity that decrease with age. Lingual papillae are projections on the tongue surface that you would see when you look at your tongue in the mirror. And inside those papillae will be the taste buds. There are 4 types of lingual papillae, and they don't all taste. So there are water receptors, there are valate papillae. Look at this at the back of the tongue, this V shape for valate. Folate papillae, fungiform papillae, and villiform papillae. The valate papillae are large and each contain up to 100 taste buds. So this is that V at the back of your tongue, but look at the taste bud. So here's your papillae, and if you go down into the crease, you'll find the taste buds down there. So just like with the olfactory patch, the molecules have to be dissolved in fluid, and then that fluid will drip down into the taste bud to stimulate our taste receptors. The foliate papillae are on the side of the posterior region of the tongue. The fungiform have a few taste buds each. You can see those on the, just sort of the center front, and then the filiform provide friction. That's on the anterior 2/3, and there are no taste buds in the filiform papillae. There are 4 primary taste sensations: sweet, salty, sour, and bitter, and there's no difference in the taste bud structure. Taste buds in all portions of the tongue provide all 4 sensations. So the map of the tongue that says, well, the front part of this tongue probably tastes sweet, the back bitter, and so on, was made up about 100 years ago and has been in textbooks ever since. There's a 5th sensation called umami, and that's called a savory taste such as broths and cheese. There are water receptors, and these are in the pharynx, and the output to the water receptors goes to the hypothalamus, affecting our water balance and regulation of blood pressure. And this will prevent us from over ingesting water. So as I mentioned, taste buds are recessed inside the papillae. And what's involved here is what is called a hair cell. So you can see the hair cells or microvilli that are protruding. And these last about 10 days before they're replaced. And there are about 40 to 100 gustatory cells in one taste bud. Basal cells are stem cells that will continue to divide and produce new gustatory cells. Taste receptor sensitivity is different for the 4 sensations. We are more sensitive to unpleasant stimuli. We're 100,000 times more sensitive to bitter, 1,000 times more sensitive to sour, and then to sweet or salty. And this has some survival value. Many toxins are bitter and acids burn tissue, so we want to be sensitive to these. And overall, this sensitivity declines with age. Which of the following cell types are highly regenerative neurons? Olfactory receptor cells. Where is the gustatory cortex located? Oh, we haven't mentioned that yet. And I don't expect you to remember that. That is on the insula. There are 5 lobes to the brain, 4 that you know, and insula is inside. Kind of go in through the temporal lobe to get to the insula. Where are the taste buds located? In lingual papillae. What central nervous system structure do olfactory nerves connect to? the olfactory bulb, and then it will travel posteriorly along the olfactory tract. What nerve is primarily responsible for carrying taste sensations to the brain? Facial. We are skipping section 15.4 and 15.5. And now we're working on the eye. So you need to know all the structures of your eye. There's a little bit too much detail when we get to the lacrimal apparatus, but in general, know the entire eye. So eyelashes are going to keep foreign matter out of the eyes. The eyelids are called palpebrae, and they're a continuation of the skin. It's the thinnest skin on the body. And the blinking allows us to lubricate our eye surface and clears debris. The medial angle of the eye is where the two eyelids meet, and then there's the lateral angle of the eye. The cornea, we can't see it because it's transparent and it is on this anterior surface of the eye. The pupil is not a structure, it is an opening. So right in the center of the colored portion of the eye, here is the pupil. The lacrimal caruncle is a small reddish body at the medial angle of the eye. And this will produce thick secretions that sometimes cause sand to land in your eyes as you sleep. The conjunctiva is a mucous membrane that lines the eyelids, and then it comes around and covers the anterior of the eye. There are tarsal glands on the inner margin of the eyelid, and they prevent the eyelids from sticking with their secretions. Conjunctivitis or pink eye is inflammation of the conjunctiva. And this can be caused by quite a few things. With children, it's often bacterial, and they spread it from one to the next quite easily. So there's a little bit of pink eye. The lacrimal apparatus here is just a little bit too much detail here. But the lacrimal gland is what produces the tears. And it's on the outer surface, the lateral surface of the eye. And these tears that it produces lubricate the eye, they nourish it, they oxygenate it, clean the cornea. They are produced on the lateral surface and then come down across the eye, obliquely across the eye, to drain into the lacrimal apparatus. These tears also contain lysozymes and antibodies to attack invading pathogens. So you can see the tear ducts. There are 10 to 12 tubes that are going to deliver the tears from the lacrimal gland to the space behind the upper eyelid. And then down here in the medial surface corner of the eye, you're going to see two small pores that are going to drain the fluid, and they will connect to these different regions here and drain into the nasal cavity. So when you're crying and produce more tears, those tears are draining into the nasal cavity. Some of them are produced so rapidly that they spill over and you cry, and the rest goes into your nasal cavity, which makes you have to blow your nose.